Welcome everybody to day one of our fourth annual Pathways to Aviation Career Week. This is our second session of the day. About 2 hours ago, we started a session that was focused on opportunities for women in aviation. And we're basically just going to continue the conversation, but open it up to other underrepresented populations within the industry to kind of uncover any obstacles, identify all the many different opportunities within the industry, and just have a great conversation about what our panelists see in the future and advice that they have for those looking to pursue careers in aviation, aerospace, military, you name it. I'm Pete Parker, Executive Director with Pathways to Aviation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization with really one goal in this world, and that's to prepare young people of all ages for careers that they want to pursue. We want it to be in aviation, but any career that they want. We know that schools, trade schools, colleges, work, garages, that's where you're going to learn the hard skills. And we don't teach that. What we do is we try to take your hard skills and help you showcase it in such a way so that when you apply for scholarships, when you apply for college or trade schools, when you apply for jobs or interview for jobs, that you're shining, you look like gold, you are ready, you know how to represent yourself verbally, you know how to represent yourself in a written format. And that's what Pathways to Aviation does. We do this 24/7. And once or twice a year, we host a week-long celebration of careers, and this is that week. And then we bring in all these industry leaders to share insight. So today, we have some incredible speakers to share their insight. But rather than have me moderate this program, we have one of our highly esteemed mentors, Marlys Pryor, who's been with us for quite a while, who's going to guide this conversation. So that if you have any questions, put them in chat. Also in chat right now, type in your name, your organization, like your school or your company. If you are a student or a job seeker, what your career aspirations are. And if you're already in the industry, you're already working, what your specialties are. Go ahead and share those. And then at any one point, you want to be introduced separately to one of our panelists. Since we don't share private information like cell phones, email addresses, that sort of thing, just type in the name of the panelist, and then I will make an introduction between the two of you. So with that, Marlys, the show is yours.
Good day, folks. I have this Australian twang occasionally, seeing as I have a very best friend who lives in Australia. Plus, I lived in England for a couple of years. So I'll say good day because I don't know what time zone you're in. So to encompass everyone, hello. I'm Marlys Pryor. I am an aeronautical engineer. That's where my bachelor's is. My master's is in business management with emphasis on strategic planning. And my area of expertise is aircraft and aircraft engine design and development. And when I say aircraft engine, I mean the propulsion system, the whole package that goes on the airplane, from the thrust reverser to the hydraulic system, to the electrical system, et cetera, et cetera. So I will not go into a lot more detail than that, but you are welcome to ask me questions at any time. Once we throw it open to everybody. So you may bombard all of us for that matter. And the more questions, the more I know we are making contact with you. So without further ado, I am going to introduce our first panelist, and it is Chief Master Sergeant, and I'm emphasizing the Chief Master Sergeant, Angela D. Ash at the Nevada National Air Guard out of Reno, Nevada. And I'm going to ask her to give her, as we call her elevator pitch, introduce herself and make herself known to the rest of the world.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to thank Pete and Marlys for having me. I am Chief Master Sergeant Angela Ash from the 152nd Airlift Wing in Reno, Nevada. I really appreciate the invitation to participate in your Path to Aviation Event Week celebration. To give you a little background on me, I joined the military in 1984. I had a long break in service. I served about a year and a half active duty as a 702, which is an administrator for the Air Force. I got out of the Air Force shortly thereafter, got married, had a daughter, and came back in 1996 to the Nevada Air National Guard. Again, working in the administrative field, which is now communications, and changing to cyber soon. So I did the administration for the wing. I've worked in other areas throughout the state of Nevada in the Air National Guard. I'm currently the wing command chief. What that title is and that privilege is I get to support the men and women of the Nevada National Guard, ensuring that they have all of the supplies that they need, they have the support that they need to complete our mission. We fly the C-130s. We have 8 C-130s that we continue to care for and maintain to support the national support of the United States. What else did I want to tell you? Yeah, I was selected as the wing command chief about just over a year ago in January. And again, I have the privilege of supporting the men and women. I think we have 1,100 plus in the unit to complete their mission. So I'm just happy to be here today.
And I would like to introduce, sitting next to her is Master Sergeant Sonia Hernandez, whom I don't know what her role is right now, but she's going to tell us.
Hi, thank you for having me. Yeah, so my name is Master Sergeant Sonia Hernandez. I've been in since 2009, been an admin, personnel, finance, budget analyst. Now I'm in recruiting and retention, recruiting and retaining the best in Nevada. And I'm just a privilege to be here. Thank you.
And our third panel member, I'm going to introduce everybody now, and we're going to fill in the blanks later because I like to have everybody on board from the get-go. And the next person it's my pleasure to introduce is Nathan Ricks. And he is, and I got to double check this to make sure I get this right, Aviation Youth Empowerment Foundation. And you will have to explain that to all of us, please, Nathan.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the kind introduction. And thank you, Pete, for setting this up for us to talk. Again, my name's Nathan Ricks, and I'm based in Portland, Oregon. As mentioned, I lead the Aviation Youth Empowerment Foundation, and our mission is to diversify the aviation industry, starting here in the Pacific Northwest. My colleagues and I started the organization a little over about a year ago now. I'm coming up on our year mark. And our sole purpose, which I can talk about a little bit later, is to really provide mentorship, to be a connector to mentorship for those from underrepresented populations, specifically Black, Indigenous, and Latinx folks and women that want to go into the industry. In Oregon alone, aviation is an $80 billion industry. And a lot of people, I think, when they think of aviation, just think of becoming a pilot. But we have so many different aspects of aviation, and our passion is to get as many people channeled into that from college programs, from community colleges, from other training programs, with the overall goal of help diversifying the industry. On a personal note, I'm a executive manager with the state of Oregon. So the foundation is something I do in addition to my main day job. And I'm a general aviation pilot and proud owner of a very small Cessna 150G that I like to putt around and be very careful in the mountains in the Pacific Northwest here. And I'd love to have any follow-up conversation with y'all after this. Thanks for having me.
Well, on that note, I'm going to put the first question to our panelists. What were the biggest challenges you faced as you pursued a career, even if that career is incidentally aviation, aviation's a sideline, but what got you started? And I'll start with Angela, if you don't mind.
What got me started? Back in '83, I dropped out of college and worked in Texas with with my aunt in a boutique. And I happened to be walking downtown Dallas and walked past a recruiter's office. And the recruiter invited me in and gave me the spiel about the Air Force. My father was in the Army when I was a baby, so I knew a little bit about the military, but I wasn't around a lot of people who were in the military at that time. So when I went back and told my family that I was thinking about joining the Air Force, they kind of thought, wow, that's kind of odd. You know, my dad even said, I think you're too prissy for that type of thing. So having the support from family was, I think, a little bit of a challenge until I actually joined and started making my way up the ranks. Sometimes people have these preconceived notions about who you are, and then you really have to show them what you're made of. And that statement that I was too prissy to do that, I think, kind of drove me a little bit.
Sonia, have you got anything to add to that? What's your background? What's the hardest thing you've had to face?
I'm the daughter of immigrants. My mom got here when she was 10. She was 16 when I was born. So I didn't think about the military ever. It's just not something that in my culture that is really advertised for us to do, or doesn't seem attainable. But just some of my friends joined the Guard, the Army Guard, and they told me about the Air Guard, and it was a pathway for college. I'm the first college graduate in my family, and I just wanted to pave the way for my cousins and all that, just so they could see that it's possible. So I'm really passionate about what the Air Guard has to offer. And now I am the retention office manager, and I am the one that manages the education program. So it's my turn to make sure that our members know about what we offer for education. And it's just like such a privilege to be here and let them know I took advantage of that program and how great it is. So yeah, it just didn't think I would be here after my first enlistment, and I'm almost done with my second one.
Nathan, how about you?
Yeah, when I think back to when I took my first flight as a kid and started thinking about how inspired I was just by everything related to aviation. I remember it took me a long time to really realize how big aviation really was. I had seen stories and watched documentaries of astronauts launching. I knew, I could become a commercial pilot, and I'd seen fighter pilots. I'd seen, folks go into aerospace engineering, and you just sort of hear a lot of stories that are inspiring about people overcoming adversity to be able to do those things. But when you really start to look at the state level, or when you start to look just in your neighborhood, in your community, you'll find that there are just dozens and dozens of small airports out there. And that's where my love of general aviation came from. And it took me a long time. It took me a little over 20 years to move from that place where I discovered that love to where I eventually ended up getting my private pilot's license. And the other thing that we hear often, just in terms of challenges or barriers from a lot of the awardees who we give scholarships to, or those that we help connect with mentoring, is just really getting the foot in the door can be hard with aviation. It's hard because a lot of commercial airliners, or a lot of advanced degrees in engineering, or even at land use planning, people that work in aviation to build the ports, right? They often have to go through 4 years of college first, or 2 years of college, or sometimes even more if you go into a graduate program. And that can be really overwhelming for folks. And often we've seen that people that initially get inspired because they've got really good science grades or really good math grades get pulled away by another field like medicine or another STEM field. And so a lot of what I spend my day doing is talking to people about why no, you need to stick with it in aviation. Don't go, it's wonderful that people build roads, but let's leave that to those that love the land, right? Let's think about how we can build our way into the future, into the air and into space. So those are just some of the things that I think as if you're just getting in high school and you're just getting into college, to think about is, how do you stick with aviation through all of the tests and through all of the other career options that you've got in front of you?
I'm going to do a shout out to one of our students on the air. Alex is a senior at Sparks High School in Northern Nevada, and he aspires to be a commercial pilot and will be a freshman at Embry-Riddle this year. And we are all inspirations to him. And he has been with us for a couple of years now, if I remember correctly. And he's got just got a whopping big scholarship and got accepted to Embry-Riddle. And that scholarship is thanks to Pathways. So anybody out there listening, pay close attention to what people are saying here, because everything that we say, you can follow in our footsteps. So I'm going to put another question to you folks. What are the obstacles facing underrepresented people, like women, minorities, etc.? Like, I'm an exception to the rule because I graduated college in 1966. So I've been doing this a little bit of time, but I still had obstacles. So I'll talk about my obstacles. Eric, stop it. Behave yourself. We have a gentleman on here who I put a little bit, he goes a little bit larger. I don't say it that way. I say a little bit. I have a little bit of experience. But what are the obstacles these days? What do you see as the obstacles? I'll go to Angela first, please.
Thank you, Marlys. I think one of the obstacles is that self-doubt along with doubt of others. When I put on chief in 2019, the job opening came up for the command chief within 6 months to 8 months of when I put on chief. So when I put chief on, that means I was a junior chief. And there's a lot more experienced chiefs in the wing. But when I saw the job announcement for the command chief, I was very interested because I had worked in several fields across the wing and had a lot of experience and had a lot of relationships on the base that I felt would make me very successful as the wing command chief. But I did have people that kind of doubted that I could do the position well because I was a junior chief in the organization. But I didn't doubt myself because of the experience that I had. So I went ahead and put in for the position. And at the time we had a new commander in the wing who did not grow up in the Guard, like many of us have grown up in the Guard and had these great relationships throughout the Guard. But the one negative thing about that is that people tend to group together with like people. So this new commander and I talked quite frequently because I was a human resource advisor for him for a short time. So when he was making his selection for wing command chief, I put in for the position and I interviewed for the position, and he selected me out of all the other candidates who were senior to me. And I asked him why he selected me, and he told me that it was based on a lot of my experiences and my relationships across the wing. And I kind of would cover his blind spots because he was an operator, a pilot, and I had the soft skills. As a resource advisor, I did emotional intelligence training, temperament training, and plus the relationships I had on base. He thought that I would be the best fit for him. So I think having that, the doubt of others, not knowing your abilities or not considering all your abilities is kind of a detriment, but I knew that I could do a really good job, I think, as the wing command chief. Some may not agree that I've done a great job, but I think I've done well, especially in this past year with all the different stresses that we've had in the wing and outside in our community. I think we've been very successful as a team. So,
Sonia, would you like to add to that?
I agree with Chief Ash. Self-doubt is definitely an obstacle. I also feel like lack of knowledge of resources that are available to people they don't know about. That could also be a big obstacle. That's why with the Nevada Air National Guard and recruiting and retention, we try to do a good job of being out in the community, letting them know what we offer, and if that's something that could interest them, and let them know that they could, you know, go to college for tuition free, just stuff like that. I think if we give them the available resources that are available to them, then that's all we could do. And hopefully the self-doubt will go away once they see that maybe somebody like that looks like them, that they can do it as well.
Nathan, what would you like to contribute? What's been your experience?
You know, the biggest thing that I've heard here at the foundation, when we talk with youth and when we talk with folks on our board, that have just this enormous amount of lived experience in different aviation fields, biggest thing is just figuring out how to get support from other people around you. And, I think that's already been said here, but our big solution for that is find yourself people that are more experienced than you in that area. Find a good mentor. I like to think of it as having like your kitchen cabinet. You see in movies, or you see in politics, people that have kitchen cabinets, they're advisors that sit around the table and tell them, sort of what their advice is. And I don't think you're ever too young to start doing that. And I don't think you can be too late in your career to get a good group of people that have a little bit more experience than you there. And it can be really hard to find out, how to start with that. And so really at any level of your career, if you're interested in aviation, there are some great programs. Clearly, if you're here on this call, you're using one. There are others like the Civil Air Patrol out there that you can join as a youth or as an adult, all the way up through retirement. There's no age limit to it. And along with that, the other thing that we hear is it's really hard to find people like me that are interested in aviation, and I think that's kind of natural, especially if you're maybe on the younger side, you're in high school, you're in college, or you're just out of college. You've got friends, right? You've got your set group, you've got some rhythms of your life, you've got things you like to do on the weekends. But the biggest thing we tell folks is you try to shake that up a little bit, right? Go to your nearest airfield and hang out with some of the mechanics, right? And the technicians, if you want to go that route. If you're still in college, but you're not quite sure, what area of aviation you want to go into, try auditing a class, do something low pressure where you don't have to take the tests and don't have to feel like you have to make a major move, but just try to go a little further, outside your comfort zone, find others that are inspired by aviation. And sometimes that'll just open up your mind to some things you hadn't considered. And of course, if you're hanging around people that are doing those things already, man, that's just a great way to get access to information. It's a great way to know about jobs, right, before others might know about financial aid. If you're a pilot like me, it's a good way to get free rides with people in cooler airplanes than I fly. So that's what I've heard most from the youth that we work with.
Well, I'm going to throw a little bit more about myself into this conversation. I grew up just outside New York City, and no one in my family knew anything about aviation careers. The most we did on Sundays, my dad would take my brother and I to the local airport, Westchester County Airport, just outside the city. And I would hang over the fence. My ultimate goal at that time, I wanted to be the first woman on the moon. But unfortunately, I have very severe allergies, so that precluded that. So I'm searching around, trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, and I still haven't figured that out. Okay, I started going to colleges. I went to an all-girls Catholic high school. They did not spell aviation, spell engineering, spell anything along those lines. So I had no support from anybody. I did all my own homework, found that New York University, the School of Engineering, had a program in aeronautics. I says, okay, applied, got accepted, fortunately. Graduation, I remember they were announcing scholarships, and I had a scholarship to the school, and the auditorium, you could hear a pin drop. The Monsignor who was presiding at the graduation turned around and looked at me like I was some kind of freak. And in his eyes, I was some kind of freak. I wasn't following. I wasn't going to be a nurse. I wasn't going to be a teacher. I wasn't going to be, whatever women were supposed to do. I wasn't going to stay home and have kids. And I really did. You could hear a pin drop in the auditorium. And it was like, I just wanted to crawl under the chair and hide, but I couldn't do that very well because you had to stand up when your name was called. But it never stopped me from going forward. I mean, even when I got, because of my first name, gym classes for men because they couldn't tell from my name whether I was male or female. But I just kept going. I ended up working for Sikorsky Aircraft as an aerodynamicist. Performance, analytical performance, to make sure a helicopter could do what it was supposed to do. Then I got into handling qualities also. But if you make up your mind you want to do something, and like I said, I keep shouting out to Alex because I know he wants to do something, but that's why I got involved with Pathways in the first place. It's been almost 5 years now that I've been, volunteering with Pathways, and I haven't regretted a moment of it. I wish there had been something even remotely like this when I was growing up, because I had no guidance whatsoever, and I had to go find my way. I mean, it was like Braille, trying to read Braille, because there was nothing out there to give me even a clue. So I had to plow my path. And we can talk about, and if anybody wants to really know more, you can talk later. But I'm going to throw this back, and this time I'm going to start with you, Nathan. What suggestions do you have for young women and men seeking aviation careers?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think one of the things we tell folks, again, kind of any age they come in with mentorship, whether it be pre-high school or all the way through completing high school or various levels of ratings for certificates, make as much of your experience in school about aviation as you can, right? So if you're doing history and you have the ability to select different projects, do it about something aviation related, right? Keep that fire alive inside of yourself. If you have an option for a science experiment, start doing some research on aerodynamics, right? Or start to bring over, if you've had a few flights, or if you've done some studying around mechanics and aviation, bring that into your class, even if your teacher doesn't do it, so you can make it alive. And you might even find some other classmates that are interested in it too, and you can form a group, really, to foster that love of aviation. The other thing I'd say, and I said this a little earlier, but can't underscore the importance of friends, friends that also share the same interest. There are a ton of local aviation air museums that would just love to have volunteers for young people that help to understand, help clean old aircraft, understand aviation history, and keep that local spirit of aviation alive. You don't have to dig very deep to find in your community some real amazing nuggets of aerospace and aviation history. Third thing, and this is a shameless plug for my organization, but apply for scholarships. At AYEF, we're actually going to be this week going through our finalist interviews for Pacific Northwest scholarships, and we've had overwhelming demand. And so our next cycle, which will take place later this year, will be nationwide. So it won't just be contained to California, Oregon, and Washington. We're really proud of that. Another thing I'd say is start to talk to those companies, right? Start to talk to those companies in your neighborhood, in your state, that have an aviation presence. You may have to look around a little bit because you might not be able to find a list, of companies, but that's something we can help out with too. And I'm sure Pete and Pathways organization can tell you, look, these are the powerhouse industries that are in your backyard. And a lot of times you just have to call and ask, and they can arrange internships or can get you job shadowing. So we want to help you be able to do that. And then last thing I'll say, because I'm talking too much here, but is, if you're thinking about entering college and you're not quite sure how to get started in aviation, make sure you talk to recent graduates of that school and look at where they're getting jobs. Because sometimes you can go in and kind of think you're going to do one thing, but you don't really know what job you're going to get on the other side. And I'll tell you, folks that go through our program, it gives them a lot of assurance when they know going in that there are people that are coming out with the job on the other side of that. So whatever your goal is, whether you want to be an engineer or you want to be a land use planner working on airports, you want to be a pilot, know the job you want as best you can going in. and talk to those people right up front. They'll tell you the right classes to take. They'll help you with what internships, really work well with the school. And that will make the whole process of making your way through that college process, I think, a lot easier.
Sonia, I'm going to throw it at you.
Hi. The Nevada Air National Guard is a really good place to explore aviation. Whether it be maintainers or you want to fly, we have load masters. We also pay for college. So if you decide you want to be enlisted and then you want to become a pilot, there's plenty of pilots here that they could mentor you and tell you how they got to where they got. And a lot of them work here 1 week in a month, but on the outside, they're pilots for like Delta or Southwest. So they have a career out of it, a job. You could fly 2 different kinds of planes, one on the weekend and one during like the week you're at your normal job. But yeah, there's plenty of opportunities here for all of that and plenty of mentors.
Angela?
Yeah, just to piggyback off of what Sonia said, we have 1,100 airmen plus out here, and about 317 are women that directly support our flying mission. Either they're pilots, navigators, load masters, maintenance troops. So that's what we do in the Nevada Air National Guard, is we support aviation and we support the flying mission out here. And we do have some wonderful folks that can mentor anybody that's interested in becoming a pilot, a nav, air crew, a maintenance troop. And then we have our support team as well across the base with our CE folks, our security forces, our mission support flight, FSS, which is force support squadron that takes care of all the paperwork for our members. So the Nevada Air National Guard is a great way to get into aviation, just like Sergeant Hernandez was saying.
I see a question that goes along kind of in keeping with what we've just been saying. What's being and this is from, I'm going to say this, Ziglisi. I'm not sure of the pronunciation. I hope I'm saying it right. What's being done to change the pipeline for women and change the people who are in charge of the pipeline to these career paths that keep creating new barriers? Let me read, maybe it might help to reflate. How do we knock down the barriers that keep women in particular from getting into aviation career fields? I know there's a lot of preconception because I encountered a whole bunch of it when I worked with the Air Force in particular. I used to travel with the Air Force, and being a civilian, I was not in uniform and I would be challenged. And I do mean challenged, like once with an M14, because I showed up on a combat ready base, even though I had all my flight line badges and stuff, and I had all the appropriate identification. I had an M14 stuck in my face because they had never seen a woman civilian on the flight line. But on the contrary, traveling with the Air Force again, we showed up at, let's see, we were in Germany, and I forget which base because I've been at so many different ones. But anyway, I show up at the, I'm qualified, the equivalent of major, lieutenant colonel for the officers club. And I show up and they go, "Oh, Fish, you're a woman." And I go, "I beg your pardon?" Yes. We don't have accommodations for women. I ended up in the general's quarter.
Oh, that's great.
Because they did not know what to do with me. Because they weren't expecting a woman. They looked at my name. Women weren't typically, especially, I'm a civilian traveling as a technical advisor to the crew on the test aircraft. You're what? This is, I mean, I wish I had a video camera at the time. The expressions on their faces were absolutely, positively priceless. All I could do was laugh. I couldn't do anything else. I wanted to cry really, but I decided laughing was better. But yes, we do, women and minorities encounter barriers. What's the Air Force doing to help overcome those barriers?
Well, in the Air Force, we're working to be more inclusive of our women. And I think a big part of that is education and training, that the differences make us better. The business industry has proven that when they have a diverse team to solve problems. So we have worked really hard at providing diverse teams to work those issues. And it also includes education. When our women, we have one of the most highly educated forces in the military. And a lot of that is attributed to the women that we have joined the military. They come back with bachelor degrees, master's degrees, even doctorates, and they join our force and they just make the team better. So I think the educating of our members is a huge way to combat some of that, so we can have those diverse teams. Because as you know, Marlys, we all think differently based on our experiences, and that just adds to the team. So that's how the Air Force is trying to combat some of those barriers.
What have you encountered, Nathan, from the organizations you've interfaced with? What are any specific examples of how you've seen people hammering at barriers to bring them down, so that not just as women, but as cultural across the board, and as language barriers?
Yeah, three things come to mind that we found. There's a lot of studies out there, and men, get ready for this, because they're throwing down the gauntlet. Women across the board in junior and senior levels of high school consistently outperform men in both science and mathematics. That's just across the board in the United States. And if you want the research paper, I can happy to send it to you. But what's really shocking is that the number of women that then choose to move into a STEM field, not just aviation, but just STEM in general, is a much lower rate, a much disproportionately low rate. And so there's something there, right? There's something there about, I think, a lot of it's social conceptions, a lot of it's expectations, some of it's not having the examples, or inclusion in early high school years, where women feel like they can do these sorts of things, or they opt to other majors. And it's not to say they can't, right? And this is what we tell companies, that we say, you need to be a part of breaking down this pipeline, right? The biggest barriers we see for women and people of color in general is money and mentorship. It's the two M's, right? And so the biggest thing that companies can do is by having specific mentorship programs for women and people of color, for funding that's specifically for women and people of color. And one of the barriers that we work on, right, here in the Pacific Northwest, is at that college funding level. A lot of colleges, if they get federal money, it's really hard for them to give out scholarships on the basis of your gender, or on the basis of your culture and your race. But we're a nonprofit, right? We can do that. We don't have those constraints, and companies can too, right? They have their own policies. So I think we need more people, everybody on this call, right, challenging companies and saying, have you really gone out of your way and tried to recruit women and people of color, right? Have you tried to go into high schools? Have you tried to go into college programs when people are looking for internships, and not just hire the standard folks, right? So I think that's a really big point I wanted to make there. And then second thing, just to kind of close things off, I see a question here about cultural and language barriers. I don't have much experience in terms of working through language barriers with folks. We just haven't had a ton of mentees that are looking for that kind of support. But in terms of cultural barriers, what I said earlier about friendships and about being able to find others that share that passion with you, we find that peer support is just as important as finding a mentor, that's older than you, more experienced. So you gotta have your kitchen cabinet, right? You gotta have your group of people, and hopefully there'll be people that share your culture, share your language, and have people that don't. Right. And so that together you can lift each other up, rather than just going it alone and feeling, isolated.
I'll add something to that if you don't mind. One of the things I've made it a habit, because my job, especially when I was working for General Electric aircraft engines, which is when I did most of my Air Force interface, I also did a lot of 180s, 360s, and 720s in place. I'd get up in the morning with the idea I'm going one place, and by afternoon I'd be someplace else. But what I also learned, what came out of that was, wherever you may go, learn to be polite in whatever language of whatever country you are in. And it's amazing what kind of doors that opens. So I can be polite in, say, of course, English, French, Spanish, German, Arabic, Brazilian Portuguese, my Greek, and my Arabic is really rusty, but I can still, but recognize that there are other cultures out there also. Americans tend to be very myopic in that regard. I was fortunate that I grew up in the New York metro area, which was multi-ethnic right from the get-go. I grew up in a mostly an Italian neighborhood, and I'm far from Italian. Doesn't sound like it, and I talk with my hands, but it enabled me to, when GE would come to me and say the Air Force has got a deployment to Germany, or they got a deployment that's going through England, or wherever the case was. One of the reasons I think I went, and I emphasize the words I think I went, because my boss would never tell me, is because I could do those 180s, 270s, 360s, 720s, et cetera, in place. I was flexible. And that's one thing that has, I think, made my career as interesting as it has been. And I think, like the National Guard, for instance, gives you an opportunity to experience other cultures. Like, unfortunately, a lot of our guys got sent to Afghanistan. That's not a culture I would exactly wish on people, but they've been other places also. Deployments overseas, the military in that regard is an incredible instrument of education. Not just the opportunities that the military presents, but it's one thing to seriously consider. But for me, it was eye openers. Even though I was in the international student, club in college, it's not the same thing as going someplace else and learning that, gee, everybody doesn't live the same way. And that's the kind of cultural barriers that I try to talk about, that people be open-minded, folks. There's an absolute multitude of people out there that are a little bit different, but they all bring something to the table. And I'm preaching, and I need to shut up and let you guys talk. Would you like to bring anything more, Angela or Sonia or Nathan? Just raise your hand if you got something more to throw on the table.
I think what you say is true, because in the Guard and the Air Force, I've had many opportunities to travel the world. I've been to Spain, I've been to Japan, I've been to Tonga, and what you say about embracing the other nations and the other people on this earth is truly important, and you get so much enrichment from those experiences, and I think everybody should embrace that. Never turn down an opportunity. Never turn down an opportunity, I say.
I still have passport, will travel.
Yes.
Nathan?
As you all were talking, one thing that we haven't touched on, but I think is just really important, kind of to that first question about how do you, really start to tear down barriers. And what we see in a lot of the private sector companies, whether they're small, family-owned, local, or the big ones, is usually that it's also the management, right? Not just people running these companies or founding them. That it needs to be diversified. And so I guess one thing I'd encourage y'all to do is think throughout wherever you are in your career, think entrepreneurially about what you can do next, because I think there's a lot of great diversification that can happen. It's some of that will take time, right? People will have to retire or leave for that to happen. But if you start your own company, right? If you see a niche somewhere in the aviation industry, again, huge, just in this small little Oregon out here, $80 billion a year. If you start a company that starts to fill that niche, you get to run the show, right? You can be a part of that change just by making those decisions yourself and modeling it for others. So as you think about, I know some of y'all just think about your first job, just want to get that first paycheck, right? Or make that pivot to another part of your transition, but also think about what you could start and how you could really run that yourself as an entrepreneur.
Anybody else got, hey, spectators, please, if you've got something to say, Peter, are we allowed to tell them to turn on their mics and comment? Okay, unmute yourselves if you got something to say, please. Alex, please introduce yourself if you're still on.
Hello, my name is Alex, or Alex in Payne. I am a senior at Sparks High in Nevada, and I aspire to be a commercial pilot, hopefully for Delta, but anyone's fine.
And for women, this is Ceci, and she belongs to the 99s, and she can talk all about women in aviation. And they offer a lot of scholarships too. So anybody who's listening, if you're interested, and if you haven't checked out the 99s, you better, or she'll get on you.
Yes, we need more women pilots. We need more women mechanics. We need more women in the entire aviation industry. The 99s is the Organization of Women Pilots. And if you're interested in that, I suggest you join them. Hold on.
Let me interrupt. Repeat this for everybody out there. If there's a panelist who you would like to see, and consider Ceci one of them also, simply provide the name, and Pete will make sure you get that you two meet. So put your name out there if you want to talk to somebody.
Sure. And I maintain a list of scholarships in aviation that covers all aspects of aviation, academic, pilot training, helicopters, soaring, maintenance, aviation management. And I'll put up on the chat the website where you can look at the scholarship. And I know Pathways on their event calendar, they always show scholarships every month when they're due. So if you have any questions about scholarships, please feel free to contact me. I'm going to be talking to someone this afternoon and mentoring her for looking for scholarships that she's available to, interested in for her career goal. And women in aviation is broader than piloting. 99s are related more to piloting, but women in aviation is the entire industry. And we have some amazing women who are like CEOs of companies, have very high positions in various industries. We have military women. And speaking of the Air National Guard, one of my friends got her flight training, much of her flight training through scholarships and through the Air National Guard. Now she flies F-16s out of Andrews Air Force Base, thanks to the Guard. The Guard is a tremendous resource for getting flight training.
And speaking of the Guard, I'm going to plug the Guard, Angela and Sonia, because a lot of people, they think, oh, military. The atmosphere in the Guard is not traditional military. It is very much, I won't say the relaxed is not the word, because the discipline is there, but the ability to interface with people in different disciplines, plus the opportunities, as Sonia mentioned, for education, scholarships, the whole 9 yards. Just because you join the Guard doesn't mean you got to be in the Guard forever, but it is a great way. It's a pry bar, if you will, to opening doors that may not be open to you otherwise. So it's just something to consider. Alex has got his future pretty well planned out. What are you going to major in at Embry-Riddle, Alex?
Aeronautical science.
I'll second that motion, being an aeronautical engineer. What do you want to do when you grow up? Because like I said, I haven't figured out what I want to be when I grow up yet.
I want to be a commercial pilot.
Okay, cool. Any particular airline?
In America, Delta, but Emirates is nice too.
No, Emirates is an interesting airline. They were the only customer for the Airbus A380, and they've retired them because it's too big an airplane for the majority of airports, and they could never fill it up. So don't set your sights on an A380.
I like the.
But Emirates goes a lot of different places. They're noted for their service. They fly both Boeing. They fly both Boeing and Airplus aircraft. So, that's what I used to do, was making sure that the engines that went on those airplanes did what they were supposed to do. Like you got reverse thrusts when you were supposed to.
Yeah.
So anybody else got comments? There's got to be somebody else out there.
I'd like to make a comment.
Okay, go.
Hey everybody, my name is Aaron Pelloquin, and I live here in St. Louis, Missouri, and I work at St. Louis University as a career counselor. Fairly new in this role, not new to education, but new in this role as I'm learning to support our students who are pursuing the industry that you all are speaking to now. So just honestly, I'm just thankful to be here, thankful to meet everybody and to just hear and learn more. So just thank you. Just wanted to say hello. Appreciate everything I'm hearing so far, and I'm really encouraged.
Aaron,
And I also see that you want to contact people. And Pete, Pete and Eric, did you catch that?
Yeah, Aaron, I just wanted to have a shout out to you. Thanks for taking the time. We're here to help. And how many states are we in now, Peter?
Hello, Peter.
A lot. 40,
A lot.
I think.
And this is a free resource to our students and job seekers. So excited you're here, Aaron. Thanks for taking the time.
Okay. Seeing as we're getting down there to the pike, folks, I'm going to say thank you to our panel members. Thank you to everybody who's contributed, really. And thanks to Pete and Eric. And obviously Pete's off doing something else, or otherwise Eric wouldn't be prime. So I'm guessing.
That
But
is hilarious, Marlys.
especially to Nathan, Sonia, and Angela. Really, really do appreciate your insights, your inputs, taking the time to be with us today. And to everybody, a shout out to Pathways.
Thank you so much, Marlys. That was incredible. Angela, Sonia, Nathan, this was great. I mean, this is why we do this. We're bringing all these people together. I'm looking in chat. People want to connect with you afterwards. This is why we do this. Not only are you providing incredible resources and information and tips, but you're allowing the candidates, the visitors, the attendees to get to know you, which is going to make you better, but also make them better. So I want to say thank you very much. I know Angela has known me for a few years, so she sort of knows what Pathways is all about. But for the rest of you, we are so thankful that you are now part of our family.
Agreed.
If there's ever anything you need, and we love to review resumes and coach about networking and elevator pitches and first impressions and how to apply for jobs and interview, come our way. We're happy to do that. Everything that we do, everything that we offer is free of charge.
That's right.
We're a
And I just
501c3
want you guys
nonprofit.
know that if Pete gets a chance to review your resume, don't be offended by the color red. Remember, it's to help you. It's to help you have the opportunity to get the career or job of your choice. And I just want to thank everyone again, Marlys for moderating this, Angela, Sonia, and Nathan. You guys are helping change lives. And that's the most important thing that we can do, is give our students and job seekers the opportunity to change their lives and seek mentorship, or what colleges to go to, associate's degrees to get certifications, and find their career or job of their dreams.
All right, Eric, since you're closing, you want to just close us out?
I think so. And great seeing everyone. Great seeing all the the folks. So yeah, Pete, I haven't been around in a while, so Pete's letting me do what we did when we started this whole thing with. Anyway, we're out of here in 3, 2, 1. Bye, guys.